Why does the five sensory, who I love so much, treat me so badly as a six sensory? It's a hard question to answer. I've heard of really horrible stories about six sensories marrying five sensories and just being terribly abused for years and just taking it and being the subservient partner and getting things for them when they ask and being at their beck and call, doing their homework for them, doing their jobs for them, or whatever dastardly thing the five sensory has up their sleeve, and then they're just drained. But the interesting thing that happens to six sensories is that they seem to get their justice in life. Maybe the five sensory partner who's treated them so poorly dies early on. And because the sixth sensory has been so sincere and really tried their best to make the relationship work, sometimes the in-laws on the other side of the five sensory actually end up caring for that sixth sensory, even though they weren't their biological son or daughter. These things do happen. And in the presence of a five sensory who's not a good fit for you, you won't experience justice because their treatment and their behavior are based on their ego justifications. And so you're not going to get the revenge that you're hoping for. You're not going to get the justice for behaving like a good girl or a good boy that you're hoping for. And on top of that, you may actually turn into a people pleaser. And this can become a very deadly trait for a sixth sensory because you keep denying your true self in favor of molding yourself around the people who are in your life instead. And that's when you experience death to your spirit. That's when you lose important pieces of your authentic self because you've tried so hard to conform to people around you who are quite frankly abusing you. And how do we overcome the cycle of abuse and mean relationships? Well, we can complain about the hookup culture. Having said that, it hasn't always been so bad because people are getting divorced now and they are breaking up when they feel they have been abused. And believe it or not, this is actually good news on the abuse front because there is a way out of it. When people were abused like 50 years ago and divorce wasn't so common, or 80 years ago, then basically there's like no way out. And if you did get divorced, you have such a stigma that it's more trauma going through the divorce than just sticking it out and being abused back in those days. And so nowadays, divorce and separations are not so stigmatized. So if you need to get one, it's a good thing that you can go ahead and do. And some religions and faiths will say you shouldn't get divorced. You should be committed to that person for life. But the thing is, I think it's fair to say you had a shot at that person. And if you really believe in that faith and you think I should only marry once in that life, then get divorced, get out of that person's life and live the rest of your life as a happy single person and be at peace. Enjoy your solitude and don't get into another abusive relationship, because if you got into one abusive marriage, I mean, maybe the religion is kind of partially right in the sense that you just jump into another one if you got married again. But the key is that you live in peace, that you get out of the abuse, you get out of the horrible behavior that the other person is putting you through. And you're the only one who can make that choice as an empowered sixth sensory. If you go by the people around you who are telling you to stay because that's the right thing to do, then you're not going to have the courage to do what's right for you. Sometimes sharing with people around you is not always a good thing because they're not going to give you the right advice that resonates for your life. They're not going to really know how bad it is for you. They're not going to understand that you desperately need to live your authentic life. And you might think it's so expensive to make those changes in your life. But I'm telling you, if you don't, you've got your life to lose. You've got your mojo to lose. You may lose absolutely everything emotionally, and you'll be like a dead person walking. You might still be alive, but you'll have no emotion, no energy, no juice to share. And don't we all know people like that on the planet? You know, people who wander around and they have no real mission or purpose. They're just angry and they're constantly complaining. I can think about this neighbor in my parents' neighborhood who's out walking her dog, and she has an amazing amount of abundance in her life, But she's constantly bitter and angry because you can tell somewhere along her life she sold her soul for approval somewhere, and she's bitter about it. And you don't want to become that person, because no amount of money is going to bring your soul back. You've sold it to some false god called approval. As intuitives, it's about frickin' time we stop living our lives according to our friends, families, expectations, and live it according to the wisdom that's inside our hearts. I want to add one last tip that you can apply to the beginning of your relationships, which will help you stay out of abusive relationships in the long term. And that is, you really have to watch your boundaries. If people are behaving in even subtle bad ways, and this can be as subtle as somebody asking you to go get something for them when they are perfectly capable of getting the same object themselves. These little boundaries, when they're set, can stop a cascade of abuse, like a snowball running down the hill, from picking up speed and building momentum in your life. Now, if you sense that the small request is coming from a genuine place, then sure, but be really careful not to take on too much work that someone else is capable of doing, like their homework or their cleaning or cooking. It doesn't mean that you nag them to do stuff. You can leave them alone, but don't pick up the slack and do things for people, because that could be the beginning of abuse. That could be the beginning of losing yourself. And is it really worth having a marriage or having a partnership if you lose yourself? My answer to that would be no. But maybe for you it's yes. But if you try that, you're at risk of getting into an abusive relationship later. You're the one responsible for your journey as an intuitive. So it's really up to you how you want to set boundaries. Having said that, you deal with the consequences, and you're the one who decides how to live their lives if a relationship derails down the line.